What's happening, y'all? Dom here from Lensprotogo and Lens Rentals. Welcome back to the channel. So what piece of gear did I just come flying in with here today? Well, that would be the DJI RS3 Mini. Yes, you can think of it as just like a miniature version of these awesome full-sized single-handed gimbals that we already know and love from DJI. But it goes a little deeper than that. They've included a lot of the great programming that we're seeing built into the RS3 Mini. So just given that smaller and lighter size and form factor, we did not dumb down the internal operations of this thing. Quite the opposite. So I'm excited to cover that stuff today. As you can see, it's not a direct relation, but I do have the RS2 next to the RS3 Mini here just for a good visual aid. At a first glance right there, you can tell the considerable size difference. And I also have at least one other setup to fly on this thing, because I do want to take some time to talk about camera and lens compatibility, accessories, and also some other neat tricks that the RS3 is going to allow you to do. So without further ado, let's dive in and talk about the DJI RS3 Mini. So just to address one thing that you've probably noticed, even though we're going to talk about this in a little bit, I have this in the vertical orientation, which actually allows you to take off this little underarm here, allowing for really exceptional vertical camera clearance. But again, we're going to talk about that in a second. So obviously this is a much smaller gimbal build. The gimbal itself is 850 grams. It's even lighter, of course, if you remove that underarm, which we'll talk about. That's going to make long duration handheld shots a much more achievable possibility with the RS3 Mini. So you're gonna have a lot less real estate for gripping the RS3 Mini, where as you can see here, pretty much using both of my hands occupies all of the grip space right here, where if this was the full-size Ronin, I have a lot of handleage there. So really form-fitting to single hand use. But the joystick and button operation here, I would argue, is a lot easier to do than on maybe an RS2 or an RS3. Just given the weight of this whole thing, it's a lot easier for me to take my thumb off for a couple seconds and adjust some things on the screen here, get my thumb back, and then readjust the grip. That's like a total possibility on this thing, where that might be a real strain on your hand / wrist if you were flying anything heavier. Speaking of that screen, it's got this awesome touch screen right here that it's borrowed from a couple of the more recent Ronin S models. It's very bright and articulate, and it still works on this sliding up and down panel system. So you slide up to get a lot of these gimbal parameter sort of functions, and then swipe down to get into more of the basic settings like setup, connectivity, and settings and such. So really clean user interface right there. That is no surprise. DJI has really got that nailed. Another thing you've got to know is we still have the front focus wheel right here. We're going to talk about the awesome tethering opportunities that allows for certain cameras with or without a remote shutter cable. So again, exciting stuff. Under that little dial is that function trigger that we're so familiar with. It can lock and access. It has a bunch of functions aside to double click and triple click. One criticism you could maybe possibly make, you might be a teeny bit more likely to accidentally hit that dial or that trigger or one of these buttons or the joysticks, just given the smaller grip area than on the RS2 or RS3. That's really splitting hairs though, and I would way prefer the lightweight operation of this over having a nice clean grip that I don't have to worry about. Other than that, it's got this little dovetail on the left side of the grip area here with these M4 thread mounts. That is going to be an excellent way to add one of these, whatever they call it, NATO extender. This is going to make underslung shooting much easier. And again, this was a type of shooting that was really tough on the hands if you were flying something like an R5 with a full-size lens on the RS3. This I could do all day. Jumping a little ahead of myself there, would not be a Lensprotogo video if I didn't go on a wild tangent. Anyways, get that back on there for now. That is basically the build. Last couple things though, one USB-C in here for charging. That's not going to allow for any camera control whatsoever. The tethered USB-C action is only going to come from this USB-C by the tilt arm here with the little camera icon labeled RSS. And finally, last thing about the build, you can say I power it off. You can lock each axis. So I'm gonna lock the roll axis, lock tilt and pan axis. And now when this thing isn't being used, it's just nice and rigid and so ready to transport without having to worry about anything swinging around. So that's great. And now I'm actually going to take this time to put this arm back on that you use for horizontal orientation. This is their whole deal with this like double quick release system. So you put the camera on one quick release and then that whole thing is on another quick release that can either go onto this bottom arm or securely slide onto a dovetail that's built into the tilt axis there. So once you get that system sort of figured out, that's a really quick and seamless way to switch between horizontal and portrait orientations. Okay, now I wanted to take a quick sec to talk about the camera and lens compatibility. They do a great job of listing like manufacturer by manufacturer, which body and lens combo it could fly. Basic rule of thumb is it will be able to fly any regular sized mirrorless body from a bunch of different manufacturers and their corresponding 24-70 lens. That's not a catch-all. I'm sure there are combinations that don't work and would exceed the payload or clearance issues of the RS3, but that's basically the rule of thumb, and I think that's pretty great considering the size of this thing. Right now I have the EOS R7 on here with a 16mm lens. I feel like this is way on the safe side for the R3. It could definitely take a larger camera body and a slightly larger lens. What I don't think you're really going to be able to do on the RS3 Mini is tack on any of those focus accessories. The Mini uses a smaller version of the quick release dovetail system that the more full-sized RS2 and RS3s run, and so I think that would exclude it from using the DJI focus motor with the little rod that comes with it. Now, considering that, you may be asking, all right, then what's the point of that front focus dial there? Well, I'm glad I hypothetically asked that question for you, because now I want to talk about a lot of the like internal programming type stuff that went into the RS3 Mini. Well, first of all, via that remote shutter port on this Canon system anyways, I'll be able to use that front dial to actually manually focus the lens internally, totally hands off the lens, doing everything just from this dial right here. And that is actually a really neat workflow, but that we've been doing that for a while. That's not new. This next feature really blew me away though. It's also able to link to compatible cameras for remote shutter control via Bluetooth. So that's like actually wireless. And I've got to test this out for myself once I get this Sony camera on there, but Sony even allows for that clear optical zoom on some camera lens combinations. That functionality is also supported on this front dial here on the RS3 too. So very integrated, a lot of great functionality unlocked with the RS3 Mini, just given that decrease in size and weight. First thing that screams out at me from the RS3 Mini is travel vlogger. A lot of single-hand gimbals have boasted how easy it is to break down and how small it can get and easy to travel with. You can break it down decently, but this thing you could shove into like a medium-sized camera bag. Every gram that they're able to shave off of this setup is more time that I'm comfortably vlogging and wanting to show my viewers stuff. This would actually be excellent to film somebody inside of a car with. So that is pretty much going to do it on this video, folks. Whoa, you don't like that. That is pretty much going to do it on this video, overviewing this awesome DJI RS3 Mini. It's kind of mad at me right now. As always, if you had any questions whatsoever about the RS3 Mini or really any of the gear you saw featured in this video, you know what to do. Drop a comment in the comment section below and we'll start a discussion. Also, if you happen to dislike this video, go ahead and hit that thumbs down button. But on a more positive note, working on our positivity, if you liked this video, you can actually hit that little thumbs up button. That will let me know that you liked this video. Next week, I am eyeballing a video on this EOS R7. Stay on the lookout for that video. So keep it steady, y'all, and we'll see you in the next one.